Emil, it's Emil Guillermo. It's kind of a weird, sad, somber kind of news day, right? When the dominant story is about the Queen. But here we are, and we're going to talk about her. We're going to talk about the Queen today. Hey, it's Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. Welcome to our program. This is what I call Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I'll tell you why that's kind of a semi-inside joke in a bit, among other things that we're going to talk about today. Of course, we're going to talk about the heat. It's hot where I am. It's 104 degrees here in the red part of the blue state. There's fires to the north of me. There's fires to the south of me. There's a gold rush town called Michigan Bluff, I believe its name is, up in Placer County. Maybe it's because people from Michigan came out and said, we're going to strike gold in 1849. I can't imagine why Michigan Bluff would be right there in the middle of gold's country, except for something like that. But it's threatened, called the Mosquito Fire. Then there's fires down south. It's hot. We're trying to regulate our temperature, our energy use. And of course, Elon Musk is tweeting out how, hey, I sell these batteries, and these batteries could be linked to your Tesla, and you could be storing up energy, and that could be used to run all the appliances in your household. Heck with all the plebes who, get cut off because they're connected to public utilities, which is kind of the backbone of democracy, right? That there are these things that everyone should have, public utilities, roads. Do we include safe streets and public schools, or are we diminished now in our expectations? But anyway, it's hot where I am, 104. Maybe by the end of this program, it'll be up a couple degrees. That's what happened yesterday. It went from 104 to 106 by the time I finished. So we're going to talk about the heat. Of course, the Queen. And, my take, you can read my take on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. In fact, maybe you should go there first. I'll riff on it in a sec. ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. It's an important, look, you can mourn the Queen personally. But what does she stand for? What does the Queen stand for? The Queen stands for colonization. The Queen stands for empire. I know she's kind of like the accidental queen because her father wanted to marry an American. So he abdicated the throne, yes, and then it was up to her. Well, actually, she thought her father would live forever, but he died in his sleep. And she got the throne. She became queen. And she was there for 70 years. I think that's the most important thing, that the Queen has been this regal thread through life. And all after empire had lost it lost its political power, but it did not lose its hold on the people, which is weird, right? We'll love you, empire. We'll love you, monarchy, royalty, as long as you have no control over our lives. You're symbolic, but don't kid yourself. They were not powerless. They were important symbols, and it's like this hangover from something that really was more bad than good. Empire, royalty, monarchy, those are anti-democratic notions. So they kind of became this weird hybrid, right? A monarchy that was more symbolic than powerful, but still had power, which is weird. But what was America? And, it's important that we respect the Queen, yes. And she's a figurehead. She's a leader to the entire Commonwealth, as well as, the UK, right? As well as, England. It's a whole of UK. But honestly, she represents a kind of anti-democratic idea that we should be repulsed by. Inside, we're repulsed by this, right? But we like her. She's the grand mom. She's symbolic. Okay, great. She's like the prom queen of the world, right? So, and look, I don't mean any disrespect. I want her. We're all mourning her. I mean, the news. I mean, look at the news. I like to compare the leads during times like this. So the Washington Post, this was their lead. This was by Adrian Higgins. Headline: Queen Elizabeth II, who reigned over the UK for 70 years, dies at 76, or 96 rather. Here, you can always tell by the lead. Can you distill it? And here was the Washington Post lead. Queen Elizabeth II, the seemingly eternal monarch who became a bright but inscrutable beacon of continuity in the United Kingdom during more than 7 decades of rule. They crammed everything in there. United Kingdom, continuity, 7 decades of rule. Died September 8th at Balmoral Castle, her estate in the Scottish Highlands. You get the where. She was 96. Her death of undisclosed causes was announced by Buckingham Palace. I mean, she didn't die of extreme democracy, I can tell you that. But she died. The third graph. In her reign, which began in February 1952, after the death of her father, King George VI, Elizabeth served as a constant and reassuring figure in Britain and on the world stage as she helped lead her country through a period of profound shifts in geopolitical power and national identity. I think this is sort of the thing. You go from empire to this kind of democracy. You have no power, and yet you do. And can you imagine? She said she greeted Liz Truss and said goodbye to Boris Johnson, yesterday, earlier this week. That can you imagine the identity complex that's going on in Great Britain now? They had Brexit, they didn't have Brexit, or they're still in Brexit, but now they have a new leader. Johnson's out. They couldn't elect the South Asian to lead. They have Liz Truss, the South Asian conservative. That would have been something. But no, they have Liz Truss. Queen Elizabeth dies today. Anyway, that's the Post lead. The Times lead. Alan Cowell's lead. Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest-serving monarch. Okay, getting right up there. Whose broadly popular 7-decade reign. Okay, yeah, that's the longest serving. Survived tectonic shifts. Okay, that's a good T word. Tectonic shifts in her country's post-imperial society. Yes, that's important. Post-imperial. And weathered successive challenges posed by the romantic choices, missteps, and imbroglios. Oh, you use a word like imbroglio, you got me. The choices, missteps, and imbroglios of her descendants, because that's what it is. What the hell is your bloodline doing, right? Died on Thursday at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, her summer retreat. She was 96. Alan Cowell, that's better. The New York Times had a better lead. That was better. Because then you get in what happened to Prince Philip, or not Philip, Prince Charles, what happened to Princess Diana, what happened to all her kids, and what does this bloodline thing mean in a post-imperial society when you're weathering the challenges posed by the romantic choices, missteps, and imbroglios of her descendants? I mean, there's a little Meghan Markle reference there too. Second graph. The royal family announced her death online. Ooh, how modern. Saying she had, quote, died peacefully. The announcement did not specify a cause. Her death elevated her eldest son, Charles, to the throne as King Charles III. In a statement, he said, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world, except by those who escaped England in the first place and said, heck with this king-queen garbage, we're forming our democracy." And that's, look, that was a good Alan Cowell lead in the New York Times. But as I say in my column I posted on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the headline is, "Obama's remind us how democracy worked for us all. Plus, dreaming of an Asian American presidential portrait." That's all in that column. Just go to aldiff.org/blog. And because I'm writing about the Obama ceremony yesterday, which I talked about on yesterday's show. Let's see. This is show 385. So I talked about it in show 384, which you can see on amok.com or on the Facebook page, Emil Guillermo, facebook.com/emilguillermo.media. But really, I'm writing about the Obama celebration, right? And it's overtaken by the news that the Queen is ill. Everyone's rushing up to Balmoral Castle. Everyone, I mean the family. You're not invited. I wasn't invited. Oh, the press is lingering both at Balmoral Castle and at Buckingham Palace. But the fact is, we weren't invited. It's family. It's bloodline. We're not part of that. That's my point. And yet, I'm overcome by the news, right? I reported on Queen Elizabeth II just once when she visited San Francisco in 1983. Then as now, as the world mourns her death, I'm gratefully reminded how in our American democracy there is no monarchy. I'm grateful that she's a reminder of that, Queen Elizabeth II. I mean, I've got nothing against the Queen. I love it. All those stories where she had to, she gets up to the podium and she has to put a little stand on because she's too short. I love that. That ingratiated me with the Queen. She needed a little booster. She needed a little affirmative action. And she got it, right? She got a little stand and now she's level with the microphone. Came up to her nose. Now, I actually like the Queen. But, and I say I respect her, of course, but I'm still thinking about how in this country we do not have royalty. I mean, who's royalty? Well, let's see. Our movie stars? And who would that be, Emil? Is Jennifer Aniston still royalty? I mean, for some people. I don't even know who the stars are. Really, I can't. Beyonce. Beyonce's got to be royalty, right? Kim Kardashian? I mean, I think only her backside is royal. I mean, I don't know. See, celebrity. We have celebrity. We don't have royalty in America. But something similar. We have a president and a first lady like Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And I talk about this, like I said yesterday, I write about it on my Aldef blog. BOMO. They're back in Washington yesterday. And so I mourn the Queen, but I'm still celebrating what BOMO represented when they came to unveil their official portraits yesterday, because that was an occasion we needed in America. And I could feel it. You know, it's like the country was getting its mojo back. Here was the Obamas. Here was Bomo coming back. And I felt it through the TV screen. I felt it through C-SPAN in my 106-degree California. And it was that good feeling of being American. You know, the invincible audacity, the peppy mojo of it all. That's what Bomo brought back. Not just for Biden, but for everyone watching. I mean, you'll recall the Obamas left the White House in that tense but peaceful inaugural transition. It was January 2017, right? And that's the way it's supposed to be. The Obamas in, and the orange man and his would-be model, she goes in their place. But governance has never been the same. Not after America entered the dark years. How dark? Well, Biden's been fighting the darkness 24/7 ever since he took over in 2020. But as we know, the narcissistic drama of a twice impeached, defeated president, number 45, never ends. I mean, the Obamas came back in the White House the very day the Washington Post, in an exclusive, exposed that the former disgraced president had documents containing the top secret nuclear capabilities of a foreign government, secrets so closely guarded, only the president and a handful of people were aware of this information. I mean, it's grave stuff if it fell into the wrong hands. And all of that found last month at Mar-a-Lago, secured. It was all secured with just a single padlock. I mean, there really was no better time for the Obamas to show up at the White House. More than ever, America needed no drama Obama. And there he was. He was great yesterday. I mean, catch it on C-SPAN again, like I caught it on C-SPAN the first time. I mean, Obama rose to the occasion. He kept things light. He just reminded us, you know, that things are all right. He reminded us of happier times. Washington Post used the term jovial. Well, it was jovial. Of course, they're talking about art. Obama, you might have seen this quote, this line. He said, "Thanks for letting me invite a few friends to the White House." He told Biden at the start. "We will try not to tear up the place," which brought out some laughter. But I think it's because people realized they couldn't tear up the place any worse than President 45. You know, this is Obama. He was funny. He was gracious. He thanked Biden for his decency, his strength. And he said this is a great compliment he could pay to Joe Biden. "Thanks to your faith in our democracy and the American people, the country is better off than when you took office. And we should all be deeply grateful for that." That's Barack Obama giving high praise to his former vice president, the current president. And it got 10 seconds of applause, and you know it could have lasted longer. It was something we needed in America. And, you know, it's the unveiling of the official presidential portrait. It's about history. It's about art, not policy. But, you know, Biden knew this was a time just to talk about some of the great things that happened under Obama. He talked about ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and Biden admitted, hey, he wanted to go for compromise. But he told Obama, he said, "You refused, you went big, and now the Affordable Care Act is there permanently, and it's even being improved on." Of course, that's not all. There was the Recovery Act. Remember that? Brought us back from the Great Recession. I still have newspapers in my other office from 2008. how we were in a dive. Obama comes in office. It's cold. I'm standing out there in Washington, January 2009. But Obama had a plan. He brought us back, the Recovery Act. And then, anyone who had a house mortgage during that time, you know how painful it was when your house was underwater. What bailed you out? Obama's hand plan. That made things right again. Made you be able to breathe again. And then he mentioned one thing that I know many Asian Americans still relate to. Biden said to Obama, "You stood up for hundreds of thousands of dreamers who only know America as their home." Yeah, those are just some of the things in the Obama era that changed America for the good. And it came out of an administration that governed like we were all one family. Not a family of classes, not a family of royalty, not a family of bloodlines. A great democracy. And Biden recalled how his kids and grandkids were all sleeping over in the hotel, the Denver convention, the Democratic convention 2008, when the Obama-Biden ticket was forged. Biden said, "For 8 years, we grew to be a family for each other, a family from different backgrounds brought together by a shared value set." It didn't just unite those two families. It tried its best to unite the country as well as it could. These are sentiments that Joe Biden shared. I mean, look, I'm not saying they were perfect times, the Obama-Biden era, but they were good years for Asian Americans, good years for other BIPOC communities. I know for Filipino Americans, how can we forget the victory over equity pay for the Filipino veterans of World War II? Who got it done after decades of fighting? Obama got it done. But really, it was Michelle Obama. She connected all the dots. And there she was standing in front of her Sharon Sprung portrait. She was wearing braids, and a lot of people commenting on her braids. I didn't even notice the braids. I noticed her. She looked great in real life, full of life and color. First lady like never before. I mean, you think of it, the Obamas individually portrayed artfully, perhaps more truthfully than any literal photo. You say, well, why a portrait? Well, this is art. This is also history. And art leaves room for the imagination, room for appreciation and inspiration. It's not a frozen moment in time, like a photograph. It's pigment. It's art. It's a painting. It's a portrait. It captures not the literal truth, but the overall truth, the almost inexpressible truth. But it's captured by art. I mean, Michelle Obama, like I said, wearing braids, looking at her portrait, she was humbled to, quote, "see the big, beautiful painting staring back at me," she said. "I never could have imagined that any of this would be part of my story." And then she launched into the importance of this tradition, the presidential portraits, a White House tradition that's part of history, and why they're absolutely necessary. Because they matter in this legacy of democracy. They matter for everyone participating in and watching our democracy unfold, she said, because people make their voices heard with their vote, and an inauguration is held to ensure a peaceful transition of power. And then she said, and once our time is up, we move on, and all that remains in this hallowed place are our good efforts and these portraits. That's the way it's supposed to be in a democracy. This is the line. This is the lineage of our democracy. Then came more of the personal touch about how this was happening to an Asian or an African American woman who, quote, wasn't supposed to serve as first lady. And then Michelle Obama asked, and who determines that? I mean, who? Well, too often, she says, in this country, people feel like they have to look a certain way, to act a certain way to fit in. Michelle Obama said, quote, that they have to make a lot of money or come from a certain group or class or faith in order to matter. Oh, you mean like they do in England? I mean, really? You mean in a place where there's still a monarchy that has power, although they have no power, but it's still a monarchy that's still in place. It still has leverage over the little people. And then Michelle Obama said, but what we're looking at today, a portrait of a biracial kid with an unusual name and the daughter of a water pump operator and a stay-at-home mom, what we are seeing is a reminder that there's a place for everyone in this country. The important takeaway from the event. She said, for every young kid who is doubting themselves, she was saying, believe that you can too. That is what this country is about, she said. It's not about blood or pedigree or wealth. It's a place where everyone should have a fair shot. In a democracy, a president isn't king. Michelle Obama added how division and discrimination might have dimmed the light in our country a bit, especially during the administration of President 45, but that what we have, what we share is so much bigger than what we don't. Our democracy is so much stronger than our differences, Michelle Obama said. It's a message that should speak to every person in our country, Asian American, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx Americans, people young, old, immigrant, native born. I'm watching it on TV here in California, right? Where it's like 106 degrees. But yesterday I'm watching the faces that stuck out still were the portraits. Although, look, I'm watching the seated audience members, primarily white. I saw one or two Asian American faces. The one I recognize, Chris Liu, current U.S. ambassador to the UN for management and reform. I didn't know there were more than like one ambassador to the UN. He's permanent ambassador. Joe Biden got him the gig. But Chris Liu was in the Obama administration, served as U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor. He's a former classmate of Obama's at Harvard Law School. Many of the Asian Americans I know, I remember back in 2008 at that Denver convention, the the Democratic Convention, and many of them were Clintonites, and they didn't exactly make the transition to Barack Obama. But there was Chris Liu. I saw him walking with Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard. You know, C-SPAN keeps that camera on, and you see all the afterlife. But as I said, the important faces in the crowd, or it wasn't the crowd, it was the portraits, the art derived from the imagination of the great artists. Both portraits enable us to better appreciate our memory of the past and to envision the possibility of an even greater future. One wonders about the portrait of the 45th president. Perhaps one day there'll be an orange-haired face with a, large body on the walls. Maybe after serving time for violations of the Espionage Act. Not sure. But let's stay positive. Can we imagine a portrait of an Asian American president someday? I mean, I think we got a vice president who's South Asian, half African American. We can imagine it. There's a woman who is like really close. I say someday in America it's going to happen. Or at least we know it can happen. Because you don't have to be royalty to be a president or first lady. That's the promise of a thriving democracy. And that's what we have in America. So I have this conflict. My heart goes out to the Queen as a human being, as a woman who I saw in San Francisco in 1983 as I covered it. I was working for the NBC affiliate back then. I helped cover the dinner that she attended. I was just a young kid reporter. Queen, I had the same attitude to the Queen then that I have now. It's like, this is why we had a revolution. This is why we broke free. But I respect her and I honor her. She's important. But she reminds me of something that's so repulsive. The nostalgia of empire, imperialism, of colonization. Filipinos know it from Spain and the U.S. How about that? The U.S. should have known better. Oh, they only held us for about 20, 30 years, half-heartedly, trying to create a transition government. How do you transition to yourselves after U.S. takes the Philippines after the Philippine-U.S. war and then decides with the Jones Act that, maybe we don't want the Philippines, but we'll give it back to you in good order, in good time. They knew it was a mistake. Not when you want to be the democracy of the free world. Bad luck. Bad luck. But we honor the Queen. And I guess Joe Biden will have to go, or someone, actually for a state funeral. Maybe they'll send Kamala. Give her something to do. She's part South Asian, Indian. She knows the colonial mentality. So the Queen, the next couple days, actually the next couple weeks, are going to be the plans that have been ongoing for years will finally be rolled out. You'll see Charles will be the king. Camilla will be the queen consort. And this is what I liked about the New York Times lead. They talked about the imbroglios and the choices made by the descendants. I mean, the queen must have had all these things planned until her young descendants figured, well, we're going to make different choices about who we want to be in love with, who we want in our aristocracy. Oh, we don't call it aristocracy, we call it our royal family. And you know, the queen always wanted to include everyone, except did she really want everyone? Ask Meghan Markle. So we'll see how the Queen's story, the funeral plays out, how it's, we mourn. I'm not making fun of the Queen. We mourn, but we don't mourn imperialism, colonization. We don't mourn any of that. The human being, the little short lady with the funny hat who needed a stool to climb up to the podium because she was too short. I honor her. I honor the human being. As they say, well, she was a reluctant queen, right? She didn't want to be queen necessarily, but once she was, she tried to make it like, hey, we're part of a family. Of course, you can't all be family. You can't all come to dinner. So she was trying. But you know what she stood for? I mean, you know where she came from. It's hard to deny that. So is a human being. May she rest in peace. So we talked about the heat. It's hot. It's 104 degrees now. Let's see. Did it go up as I was talking? I mean, because that happened. That has happened the other day. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's 106 now. We're going up to 111. It's 106. Also, there's like an air alert that says do not do any outdoor activity. And I will attest to that. You should not go outdoors. If you go outdoors, I don't know, get the mail. I don't think it will. It's just nicer to be here in my COVID closet speaking to you here. But it's going to be hot. And the most startling thing I read was Elon Musk, who has moved to Texas where it's going to be hotter. I mean, they're going to have more hot days than California. Right now, California is taking it on the chin. But he said, hey, look, get more batteries. If you get the kind that store up the energy as opposed to the kind that won't work if you're using your solar power. There's a kind of battery that will store as you're using battery energy from your solar panels. And of course, he sells it. So Elon Musk, a humanitarian. It sounds like a good idea. If we're getting hotter, we better do something to control or to harness the heat from the sun. Because right now, the big culprit in the heat isn't necessarily people, dying from overexertion or the temperatures. The big bad heat wave negative is that PG&E, in trying to deliver energy to the people, the utility companies, they're having their equipment fail or spark and create fire hazards in all these different areas. That's a speculation, not confirmed, but it's happened in the past. And without the kind of checks needed on the equipment, this is what we face, especially when we have these surges. So I don't know how we get out of this, but one thing you realize that you have all these natural calamities that happen: earthquakes, flooding. Experience earthquakes. It's a little shake. It's scary. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know when it's going to happen. Scary. Only one. Oh, I was gone for the big one, the one in 1989. I was back east. I'd gotten a job back east, and we missed that one. The Loma Prieta quake. But you got quakes, you got floods. I've experienced bad floods. Houston, Texas. Even here in the Bay Area. I had a problem. You don't need much more than some kind of blockage in a drainage system that backs up. I was living in essentially a gully, and I had water up to my neck in a San Francisco suburb. It wasn't a river. It was like a little gully way. And I was fine, but my neighbor, oh my God, floods, everything destroyed. They get over the lip, over, the threshold, your doorway, everything destroyed. So I think of all those kind of natural disasters. Heat disaster or heat occurrences without fire, I'll take heat wave, because the heat, I don't mind sitting in my sweat. I mind, though. The real danger is fire when the utility companies have a problem. When they have a problem with their equipment sparking and then causing dry brush to set fire. I think the green days may be numbered for parts of California, where it looks like if we're going to see these, 100, we're expecting 111 degrees where I am. And it used to be just a dry, oppressive heat, but it's getting a little humid, and then it just comes out of your pores. It comes out from your body, responds to the heat, and it's just totally uncomfortable unless you can hydrate, lots of water, and you can stay close to your air conditioner. And of course, your air conditioner means you're using electricity. It's just a bad situation. But you can handle it. If everyone, right now, what they're doing is they're saying between 4 and 9, if everyone pitches in and doesn't use the great energy suckers, stuff with the pool, stuff with the AC, if you limit your use to outside the peak times of 4 to 9 p.m., then there's enough for everyone. But it's a big challenge. Like I said, I don't mind sitting in my sweat. So at this point, I'll take heat wave over floods and earthquake. My opinion on, the jury's still out on locusts. I'm not sure about locusts. I'm not sure about pestilence, but I know, a virus. Yeah, I don't like viruses. So I'll take heat wave for now. Just a few short things. I want to talk about the news. And this was something in the news. It was in the Washington Post. It was like it was a bulletin, not a bulletin, but like a breaking. Sea level rise will shift coastlines and property lines. Rising seas could swallow millions of U.S. acres within decades. New research finds an estimated 25,000 properties in Louisiana could slip below tidal boundary lines by 2050. Florida, Texas, and North Carolina also face profound economic risks. And I imagine that they're talking about the coastal regions. North Carolina, I know all those places in North Carolina. When I lived on the East Coast, we'd go down to North Carolina, South Carolina. I know there's places in Texas, Galveston, Corpus Christi, and the Gulf Coast and Atlantic Coast stand to lose the most. It's not just about flooding homes. It's about eroding tax bases because something comes in. Who wants to live there? I mean, you got to think about this as far as every natural disaster, not just flooding. But, well, it hasn't happened with earthquakes yet. But maybe with heat. I talked about this yesterday. Of course, they say the future isn't set in stone because if we do something, if we act together, we get to lower the curve, buying us more time, we can mitigate against those rising sea levels, do something about emissions, do something about what we use, make it in concert with, our use with the sense of longevity for the earth. I just think it's important that you need to understand when people who are the climate deniers are saying, climate is a hoax. It's not a hoax. We're living it. And every time we live through it like we are now, you got to call it out. You got to say, this stuff's for real. All right, just two more things I want to mention. My friend, Richard Prince, has a website called Journalisms. And he talked about, it's at journalisms.com. And he wrote about Bernard Shaw. People of a certain age know Bernard Shaw. He was anchorman at CNN. I believe he was their first African-American anchor. He was primetime, certainly primetime. He was Richard wrote a nice piece, but he died of pneumonia. He died on Wednesday. And he was the chief anchor at CNN for 20 years. I mean, you could not. I mean, he was synonymous, right, with CNN. He was 82. He died of pneumonia. The network released a statement. He was there when they launched in 1980. This was an important time. And, Chris Licht is the chairman and CEO of CNN, but he wasn't there at the beginning. I mean, I wasn't there at the beginning, but I worked with people who were there at the beginning. That's when it was Ted Turner's network. And he was a CNN original. That's what Chris Licht said. And he covered all the landmark stories of the last 3 decades. Tiananmen Square in 89, California earthquake in 94, the death of Princess Diana in 97, the 2000 presidential race. He was called, when the boys of Baghdad I'll never forget this because it was on January 16th, 1991. He was in a hotel room with Peter Arnett and John Holloman. John Holloman. Oh my God. I never met Peter Arnett, but John Holloman, a good guy. The late John Holloman. Actually, I think Peter Arnett's passed on too. Now Bernie Shaw's gone. But he was the thing about Bernie Shaw. He was a tough anchor, but he was also a tough moderator. And it was the presidential debate in 1988 between George H.W. Bush, the father, and Michael Dukakis. And Bernie Shaw asked this question of Dukakis about whether he would favor the death penalty for a person who hypothetically raped and murdered his wife, Kitty. And the governor, Dukakis, governor of Massachusetts at the time, couldn't handle the question. He answered it in a way that saw his standing plummet because he did not answer the question with the kind of passion, a hypothetical question where your wife is raped and murdered. This is where you show your passion. And Dukakis couldn't, and it was seen as a character flaw. I mean, that's what people remember Bernard Shaw for. But I remember him being a person, a tough-minded journalist, no nonsense. Bernie Shaw was no nonsense. And those are the guys. Those are the guys we remember. Those are the guys who have a special place in the pantheon of journalism. And that's why we meant he died Wednesday. Yesterday, confirmed by the network, he was 82. It's sad because he was an icon as I was coming up in the biz. And like I said, I knew John Holloman because he was a reporter. I remember him stopping me we chatted a couple of White House Correspondents' dinners. Never got to meet Bernie Shaw. Only knew him through his work and his reputation. And so, Bernie Shaw, rest in peace. Bernie Shaw covered Tiananmen Square in '89. That was one of the first stories that I was able to help report. I was in the studio in Washington, D.C. at NPR. '89 was this weird time. Weird time because everything was happening in the news. Everything was happening in geopolitical, from a geopolitical standpoint. Where there was no democracy, people were yearning for democracy. And it was happening in Tiananmen Square. So I bring this up because when I was there was this reporter she was a fantastic reporter. That was the thing about when I was working at NPR. I was in the studio reading, interviewing people, but it was special when I got to interview reporters from afar, foreign reporters who had the news, people like Deb Amos, but also people like Ann Garrels. And it saddened me to see that Ann Garrels passed away. She died in her home she was in Connecticut. She was just 71. I mean, there's these moments that you don't forget when you're in the business, right? I remember Ann Garrel's coming into the studio, giving me something to read. Here's my lead. I mean, all professional. I mean, we never really. She was older. She was one of the older vets. I was the young NPR, all things considered host. And she knew her stuff. I was happy to have interviewed her the few times I did on foreign stuff. What I remember about her, foreign correspondents, when they go, I couldn't imagine the kind of risks they take to go out there and get the story. So you have stories like, I remember Ann Garrel's just talking, about going from Nicosia, because they reported out of some of the Middle East stuff. They reported out of Cyprus, and you'd have to go to a safe place to report safely, and then sometimes you'd go in, and they'd have to carry cash, a lot of cash, your tape recorder, and you're gone, sometimes weeks at a time. And I'm the new kid, right, from California, come to Washington, D.C., and I'm just trying to get it together for the studio presentation. I do stories locally, and they sent me to some regional stories while I was there. But I remember Gutsy Ann Garrel's and her preparation. She was going off the next day to cover something in the Middle East. And, it was, I don't know if you recall the movie Under Fire, but, that was big at the time. I mean, you respect those kind of just those dogged reporters are going to get the story no matter what and come back and tell the story they found. There's an interesting piece in the New York Times. Actually, I'm reading in the Boston Globe, where she went off on a story, and it was different from what the network saw on TV. And it was so different that they said, do you want to change your story? Because it's not what we're watching here reported on by the networks. But she had backbone, and she had integrity. She knew her stuff. She knew what she was getting. And she knew the story she had was the real story. You got to respect that. And you got to respect the fact that her bosses backed down and didn't say, you got to change your story to match what the other TV networks are putting on. That was the kind of reporter she was. So it's funny. We didn't work very, very often. We didn't talk very much. I think I wasn't there very long. And toward the end, when I saw her, I think she smiled at me once or twice. But it was always business. And I'm sorry that we didn't work more together. It's funny, and she's been retired. She went off to deal with her lung cancer, and that's what she died of. But as the Ukraine-Russia conflict began this year, she actually offered, even though she was retired, to go and and cover the conflict. They didn't send her, but she found a nonprofit relief organization, assist-ukraine.org, which raised money to send supplies to Ukrainians. It's the kind of person Ann Garrels was. So again, this is a strange day. We talk about the deaths of two journalists, Bernie Shaw and Ann Garrels. In many ways, I mourn them more than the Queen of England. So I think that's it. I think that's it for today. If you're with us, thank you for joining us. I'm Emil Guillermo. I'm here live Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live, because by 2 p.m., what's done for the day is done, generally speaking, right? But I don't think there's going to be another story aside from the Queen. The Queen is still dead. People are still finding out. People are still reacting. And the reaction to that will be with us for a few days. But check out my writings on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Back tomorrow, we'll talk more about the Quinto story. We talked about the Angelo Quinto story yesterday. Talk more about it tomorrow. And some other things when we come back tomorrow. Now, you can catch us on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMIL-AMOK. You can also catch us on YouTube at my pathetic Emil Guillermo YouTube channel. Subscribe. Do what the algorithm says. Please. You can also go to Facebook. Facebook.com. Watch it on Facebook Watch or Live. Or better yet, Facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media. You can catch us there live. Also the replays. Or just go to AMOK.com. My handy dandy AMOK.com. Amok.com for all the replays. This is show 385. Every show at the end. 384, 383, 382, so forth and so on. I like to end with a little meditation. Because, the world could use a little meditation. Heard about a friend who was thinking these suicidal thoughts. Before it gets there, the kind of thoughts that come up, you feel a kind of shame. You feel a sense of unworthiness. I'm telling you, you feel shame, you hear shame come up into the equation. There's only one thing, one antidote. And that's self-compassion, self-love. It's being kind to yourself, not being too hard on yourself. When you're kind to yourself, it helps you to get beyond the shame, to get around the shame, to make you understand you're worthy of love. In fact, we're all worthy of love. And once you realize that, the self-compassion, the self-love begins to flow through. And you build up that sense of worth, sense of worthiness. Like Michelle Obama said, you don't have to have a bloodline. You don't have to be from a certain family, have any money. You can just be you. You can be you and do you and feel that sense of worthiness. So we practice this loving kindness meditation where you think about your mentors, people who love you, who teach and guide you. Then you think of people who may even be your enemies. They don't love you at all. But you got to show love to them. Then think of a third group, people who you're indifferent to. You are indifferent to them. Walk by them every day. And the fourth group, just everyone else. Animals, your dog, maybe other people's dogs. You think of all four of them. And then you go through the litany. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. You can make up your own. May you live with love. May you live with certainty. But I like those four. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. You do it with all four, one at a time, all those four groups. And you feel that once you send out the feelings of compassion toward others, funny thing happens. It comes back. It comes back. And you feel it. You feel it. So, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here, back again, 2 p.m. Pacific, tomorrow. Emil Amok's Takeout, amok.com. Until then, mahal